when I look around the major games in esports, I am actually legitimately shocked, even to this day in 2016, by how there are barely any journalists relative to the size of these scenes and the size of these games, because people might not realize this, but you go back in time, okay, when Quake first came around, the late 90s going into the early 2000s, there was tons of people who wanted to do columns and interviews and stuff. It was entirely a grassroots scene. Then in Counter-Strike, I mean, we're talking about a period I'm thinking of when there was a lot of people coming around. It was like 2004 to 2006. Masses of people getting involved, writing articles, trying to do work, do news posts. You're talking about more people now than there is in all of League of Legends. And yet there's a much smaller scene, smaller game, less people playing the game, less people watching the game, less money involved in the game. And so I'll go through a little bit of the history of esports journalism in an overview sense so you can get a sense of this, because okay, in the early 2000s when esports journalism really kicked off with the first sites, initially it was all very, very basic stuff, because everyone involved in the journalism side was a total amateur. They had no training, they hadn't even got experience doing it because esports wasn't really a thing at that point in time, but they were all pretty dedicated. Some of them super dedicated. I mean, in general, people then didn't care about making it or making a lot of money because that simply wasn't an option. There were some sites early on before the initial .com bubble burst where you could make some good money, you could make a little bit of money, but even then, people never thought of this as a career. They never even thought of it as something as they'll do more than a few years because they were just interested in Quake and games like that at this point in time, or Brood War, something like that. So the first generation, in general, was just amateurs who wanted to do it, they enjoyed it, and they had some fun doing it. Maybe they made a tiny bit of money. There were a few stars early on who did get really paid. I mean, there's a couple of people just before I started who got really paid, and I came along actually just when the .com bubble burst, and so there wasn't a lot of money there, but I managed to eke out my own little niche. Then when you get to the mid-2000s, now event coverage really kicks in and becomes a thing. Like when I was doing event coverage back in 2002, it would be me going there. The press area, unless it was a local journalist, just would have one person, like me and one other person, and I'd be doing interviews as like an audio interview on an MP3, well, get made into MP3, on some sort of recording device, and that'd be it. There wasn't a massive slew of journalists. Event coverage wasn't a thing. People weren't doing it. It was at events. They weren't taking photos. There's actually very few photos of any of the CPLs from 2000, 2001. You just don't find them. In fact, I took half of them. So the funny thing is, by the time you get to the mid-2000s, now event coverage is a big thing. Now every big event, every CPL, every East WCS, every World Cyber Games has a bunch of press there doing on-site interviews, taking lots of pictures, writing lots of news posts, doing predictions, doing analysis, all the journalism you expect, and it becomes largely centered around event journalism. And as a result, now that we're getting sponsors involved, now the games are bigger, there's a regular circuit, now it becomes a job, a scene where it can be full-time. You can even have a pretty good part-time salary doing it, like maybe like a few $100s a month, and you do like 20 hours a week or something. Now, by the time you get to sort of 2006 or 2008, this was, at least for the last decade, really the prime spot. I mean, when you forget the .com era, which, by the way, was a bubble, it was like a massive inflation of people who were rich coming from companies in the real world, paying massive amounts, like $10,000 for one banner ad, before anyone really knew how you could monetize the internet. And so it was all inflated. So once that burst and you went down to zero in the early 2000s and it gradually built up, 2006 to 2008 was the next time a huge bubble basically occurred. And part of the reason why was, this was before the recession happened, the global recession. So what happened was, at this point in time, all the sites have just gotten bigger and bigger. There's more money, more sponsors. Everything's consolidated. There's great viewership numbers. Esports has a plethora of games at this point in time. Now, journalists, they're making good money. There's some pretty nice salaries out there. There's people making full-time salaries. People starting to make a career of it. They've been doing it 2 or 3 years. Then the recession hits in 2008, and up till about 2010, there were real problems in terms of the financial aspect of this. And as a result, being able to have sites that could send you to events, or if they sent you to events, pay you a salary as well, or give you equipment. And so that period there was really the famine period. That was where it cut out a lot of the people who were either had inflated salaries or weren't really in it except for partially the money and some of the fame, etc. And it cut it down to the people who still just wanted to do it because they really liked it, regardless essentially of what they got paid. Now, 2011 onwards, now we're starting to get games. StarCraft 2's getting big. League of Legends is gradually coming in. CS is still big enough to have a following in Europe, for example. Now we're in a world where it was getting back up there again. It's starting to become a job again. What's funny is now, in the latter days, so talking like 2013 onwards, you can make full-time livings. You can make very good livings if you're on the top end. Now there's lots of freelance opportunities. Now there are tons of different sites you can write for, in theory, in terms of like the smaller ones with lots of opportunities because of how many games there are to cover and how many matches there are in leagues. And yet what's funny is these newer games, League of Legends, Dota 2, CSGO to some degree. These are huge games. These are way bigger games than the scenes were, and the games were, and the prize money were, and the amount of sponsorship were than any other game in the past history of esports. And yet, comparable to the size, the amount of journalists hasn't scaled up. In fact, it hasn't even gotten to the kind of level that we were at in the mid-2000s. I mean, you can admit, you can definitely obviously consider, for example, look at the EU sites in European esports. There aren't that many. There aren't any big ones because obviously to some degree Reddit has sort of killed off the era of the big site that's like based on one or two games and is in a certain region and everyone always goes to that site. Now that site can exist, but it's only going to get traffic via Reddit. So it's a different model. So it's true they don't exist in the same particular way. But this is quite a strange area because I actually feel part of it also is just less people trying to do it, less people wanting to do it, less people understanding how to do it. And so when you think of some of the key roles, interviewer, article writer, we're not just talking for League of Legends, CSGO particularly, Dota 2 especially, there's barely anyone over there. What's funny is Reddit, the positives of Reddit is now you can build a brand outside of a website. Now you can get traffic no matter what website you write for, if it can capture the imagination, if it's seen as good, if it is good to some degree. So Reddit centralized everything. So now people go to Reddit. They don't go to websites, they go to Reddit, and then they go from Reddit to the other websites. So as a result, there no longer is a place, unfortunately, where people understand how you can find even an opportunity to become a journalist in esports. And so even if someone was to make a Reddit post like, oh, we want to hire people to be a journalist for this, it probably won't make it to the front page. It won't be there very long. It'll drop off. You maybe have a day or so. You'd have to be checking Reddit every day. So a lot of people aren't going to be able to see it in the way that they would on a big website where it can be stickied on the side and it would be there, for a month as you were going there and they'd get a lot of applicants. So as a result, I have to say, part of it is not ignorance in the sense that people just have no way of knowing about it. It's that they just haven't been in a position where they can understand where would they go. Like no one knows, where do I go to become a journalist? How do I transition from doing some free volunteer stuff into paid work? People have to take their own initiative in this world. You can't just wait for this opportunity to come. You have to make it happen. You have to go out there and look for things, and you have to be persistent. Seek and you shall find, as the old, cliche at this point goes, but there's some truth to it. So here's the thing, okay? I'm not going to go into massive depth, but if someone wanted to start now, because we need good people, if someone was to start now as a journalist, the ideal would be that you know some of the basics, like get a book about journalism. Just Google about journalism online. Read some of the basics. If you want to be an interviewer, find out some of the basics of how you structure an interview. Read some interviews you like and try and think what they were doing there. Similarly, if you want to write news posts or something, learn about the pyramid theory of news post writing. Learn about how to write an essay. Read some essays that you like. These would be a good way to start. But if you want to know how to start literally, as in I've got some very basic skills, or I think I want to develop some skills, but where do I actually go to start my first things? I would say before you write any articles, go to Reddit. That's the key thing. Since you're going to be using Reddit anyway, first of all, you need to learn how Reddit works. Like how to phrase something so that even though it goes sometimes against the consensus opinion or is different or more nuanced, by explaining it very well and by not being combative in how you explain it, now posts won't necessarily get downvoted. People might have discussion with you. It might change your opinion. You might get more information on it. It might educate you as well as educating other people. This can be a sort of training for how to write. It can be a training for how to present your ideas. And importantly, it'll be a training for how to take the pulse of the community, to understand or difference between what you think, what they think, how to bridge the gap, or maybe where you agree and you could actually bring out something that people are sort of thinking but they can't articulate, or you can explain something in more depth that people wanted to know about anyway. This is an area where you're going to learn not only about yourself as you develop your writing and communication skills, but you're going to learn about the community as well. So I would start out writing Reddit comments, get involved in discussions, don't call people idiots, just start trying to explain your case. In fact, try and do it in a manner where you try never to insult someone, never to condescend to someone, just to explain your position and reply to them. Use the Socratic method. Why do you think this? Oh, do you have any evidence for this? Oh, this is what I think instead. Do it this way, and as a result, especially if you can find knowledgeable people or people who are just very experienced in the scene, like there's fans out there who don't do any content, but they've watched tons of games for years and years, discuss with these people and it will educate you. It will help you know how to structure your arguments. Like, oh, I didn't make such a great point there. He has a good point here. It will train you in a sense. Then, after you've learned this skill, how about writing some self-Reddit posts yourself? Bring up an interesting topic. Try to do one of those self-Reddit posts where it's like a mini article, like here's something about this topic, and then see which ones, if you can get them going, if you can get them interesting. Again, you're learning how to capture people's interest, how to craft something so it's something you're interested in, but also something that other people might be interested in. Then there are websites out there that you can publish on right now. You can it used to be Gold per 10, it's now Gamers. You can go there and publish articles. I mean, if you don't want to make any money, you can go to Medium. I'm not sure what the system is there, is how you make money off it. And there are some censorship issues recently with some social justice warriorship, but these are sites where you can publish articles, use Twit longer if you really want to, get out there on Twitter. Check sites regularly. If you ever want to have a job and progress this as a career as well as just develop your skills, look on websites, Esports Heaven, look on Gosu Gamers. Check so that when they have that post that says there's openings, you're there. You're ready to apply for it. And check the Twitters of teams you like. Follow them on Twitter. Therefore, when they have an opening for staff writers or something, you're in position to go and apply for it. First and foremost, you're going to have to work for free. But you're going to be willing to do that because, first of all, working for free will develop your craft. It's like you're getting a free education, actually, even though you're doing work to do it. You can learn the industry. How does the industry work? How much can I expect? How do I learn the politics of where to get in my own site? What do people want that's more valuable than something I'm doing for free now? How do I transition to that? These are very important things that you don't know right now. And since you don't know them, to some degree, you don't deserve money right now. It's not in a position in terms of market value where you can command that money. Create content that you enjoy. So start doing things that you enjoy, but also learn how to work up to bigger things that you want to do. So just because you can't do the ultimate thing you want to do now, there's no point just giving up. It's a process. You're going to get to that point, right? So find something right now that you do that you enjoy, and then maybe on the side you have to do something you don't enjoy as much, maybe some news posting or something, to get by, to either earn some money or move up in the organization or get responsibility and resources to be able to do things you want to do. And gradually you're going to get closer to the position of doing the thing you really want to do. Now, when you're in this position, here's the key thing as you're learning in this sense. One thing I hate, because it's such a ridiculous thing that people say, is when they suggest like, oh, I could have done that if I had X, Y, and Z resources, or oh, I have a really sick idea, but I don't want to just waste it when I'm a nobody. No, never hold back on a good idea or something you think would be great right now. Because the whole thing is, it doesn't matter how great the idea is. Odds are, initially, you're not going to have the skill set to develop it and do it really well. So even though you fail right now, the gap between the idea in your mind and what actually becomes manifest tangibly in the world is going to be so big, it's going to tell you right now exactly where you need to improve, how much work you need to put in, and if it just so happens you nail it and you get a really good job out there and you do something amazing early on, this is where people are going to see you and go, oh, I didn't even know, who's this guy? This is pretty good, and they're going to scout you, and that's going to move you up the ladder much quicker if you've done a good job with it. So never hold back on an idea. I always say to people, because I know a lot of people even high up in the industry who are like, oh, I'd like to do a podcast, but I don't want it to just be on a webcam, I want it to be very professionally produced, I don't want to be in a studio, and I want my guests like not to just on Skype. Those things is why they never get it done. Or if they do 2 episodes. Instead, you worry about all the extra things when you're in position to. Right now, what you do is you start out and you just do it. So even if it means you do it with terrible webcam, even if it means you do it with a nobody and no guest or whatever, and no big name for it, you start doing it, you learn, you keep improving, and then gradually, as you get the opportunity, as you get the resources, you add those things. Better production quality, get better guests because now you're known more. Now you have a proper overlay. Now, it's better to be doing things now and to be improving and to be putting them out there. This is when people will come to you, when opportunities will come to you, when you will create chances to improve what you are doing. I started this series, in fact, just a random thing. I just got a basic, I didn't have an overlay initially, I just had a black screen, I just put the thing on it, started doing it. It wasn't until I kept doing it that I had ideas like get an overlay and then do these things, and now I can get sponsorship. I was doing it for like a year before I made anything vaguely decent in terms of money. It was worth almost not even worth my time in terms of actual money, what I could be earning elsewhere. But I knew I was trying to build something and develop something. So you can't be entitled in that particular sense. Learn how to use social media effectively, efficiently. So you want to have Twitter, you want to have Facebook. First and foremost, to archive your stuff. People who follow you very regularly, they're going to see your pinned tweet, they're going to follow your Facebook page. They're going to be able to not only see your current stuff, but then go back in time and see your old stuff and see what was good there in that particular sense. Have somewhere where, by being on Twitter and Facebook, where you can find new shit yourself, so you can associate yourself with other people and comment on their things and find really good stuff, but then a place that other people can find your stuff. And since you're posting your work, guess what? Now as you grow in name, value, etc., it can get retweeted. And then when it gets retweeted, someone else reads it. Then he gives you an opportunity, it gets retweeted more. Another key detail is, right now, even if you have an idea of what you want to do, you might not actually know what you want to do and what you'll be the best at yet. So learn multiple skills. Have a wide skill set so that you can be invaluable, or you can go in many different directions as your whims take you or your dreams take you. So learn how to interview people, even if you just want to be a writer. Learn how to do long form articles, even if you just at the moment only can do news posts. Learn how to do short form articles, columns. Limit yourself, creative restriction, and learn how to be very good there and be very articulate, but not overly verbose. Make videos. You might be someone, oh, I'm really good writing. Okay, learn how to do videos as well. Learning how to think, speak and think on the fly will also help you when you then come to write in a different format, because then you'll appreciate the benefits of that format and maybe get more out of it in that particular sense. Learn how to do editorials, how to craft your opinion, how to give your opinion without being too obnoxious, how to make it relevant to the current moment, so you're not just hiding behind the safety of always writing about the past or about something that's separate and no one can really judge. Do all these things and develop your skills, and then you'll have all these options of where to go. Build your brand. So pick an alias. Make it not a stupid one. Make it not something that would make people look down on you. Make it something that people can spell easily, that they can say phonetically, that they can Google, and in general is going to find you and not something more famous. And stick with it. Think up a conception of what you want to be, who you want to be in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years. And think of what the key words associated with that would be. And then ensure that as you work, the decisions you make, the types of work you do, the effort you put into it, how you improve, and where you go with that, fit with the narrative of these key words, assuming you want to stay in that direction. But if you want to be this certain type of person, if you want to be someone provocative or who draws attention to, or maybe you want to be someone where your approach is, I always want to be very academic, and I want to be the person where it's considered very unbiased, and I want to be the person who sticks to only whatever it might be. Think of all the keywords and then try and shape it along this path. That's going to be the guide to what you want to do, is these keywords that you've picked and the kind of ethos to your work. This is a key detail, and it sounds like a minor one. Don't be a shithead to other people in the industry. It will not only directly hinder you years down the line when you don't know it, it will hinder you right now. There are many people, you'll notice, who came along and they were nobodies, or they had very small followings, and if I thought their work was good, I retweeted it, or I tweeted about them, or I started following and I started reading their work more. A number of those people, I would have continued to do this, or I would have done this sort of thing for them, as I would have friends or people I think are good. But my first encounters with them were them out of nowhere, never spoken to them, never known them, insulting me or saying things that were very disrespectful to other people in the industry, or saying things in a manner that was very obnoxious. And so you know what? As a human, it makes you think, yeah, I think I'll stay clear of that guy. Someone else can help him out. I'll stick with people I like and who are polite to me and who I would like to work with and whose work I actually want to encourage. And so in this sense, you will only lose out early on when you're nobody. People think, okay, naively, for example, they look at my career and they think if I make fun of a player and I make a joke about a player, that's how I got famous. No, it's the other way. I waited till I already had all the skill set, I had everything else in place, and then if I want to make a joke about a player, my style and my keywords mean that I'm capable of saying these things, and that doesn't affect my path of where I'm going. I don't have to have that player help me. That player won't hinder me because of the way I'm going. And by the way, I'm someone who's very productive, very diligent, and doesn't give up. So if you're someone who's just starting out, you do not want to make any enemies in that particular sense, especially not in the industry of journalism itself. Lastly, this is a really important one, because again, this is something that maybe you aren't shared to people, but this will put people off helping you, trying to work with you and trying to be fans of yours, is if you whine about not succeeding. If you talk about how someone else is doing it in this way and you're better than them, or you talk about how this piece should have had more, or this really puts people off. No one likes self-pity. Like, it's a really terrible quality to have, even if you think it. I mean, I would say work on not thinking it. I would say have a level of stoicism to yourself. I would say, like, work on detachment from natural success, in the sense that you want to develop success, but it's not vital to how you validate yourself. I would say all these things on a philosophical level, but you know what? Forget that. Even if you actually are a mad whiner, just don't say it out loud. Don't put it on Twitter. Don't put it on Facebook. Say it to someone privately, or say it to yourself, or write it in a diary. But just expressing it will put people off. No one wants to be around people like that, by the way, we perceive people like that as losers. That guy who's like, I could have done something, I could have been somebody. Yeah, that guy's a fucking loser. No one wants to be around that guy. No one ever goes, yeah, you're right, you could have done. Yeah, fuck the world, right? Can I help you out? No, they go, you know what, I'll stay away from this guy. He's got a loser's mentality. So, as a basic thing to say at the end, there is no secret. That's what I'm trying to outline here. You've got to work hard. Doesn't mean you have to work harder than someone, or that if you work harder, you will succeed. You've just got to work hard within your own world. You've got to improve. You've got to look, how can I get this better? Even if you think you did something good, what could still be improved here? You've got to be polite. If you are polite to people and show respect, this will engender a similar relationship. Also, it will allow you early on, for example, if you say a really ignorant opinion or a bad one, someone might just politely say, oh, since you've been nice to them, they might just come along and go, oh, actually, it's this way. Or I would say, watch out, like maybe read this. They will then give you they will help you out. If you're obnoxious about how you do it, they will just dismiss you. Forget that guy. Might even block you, might just ignore you completely. Be creative. So do the things that you enjoy and that maybe you've taken inspiration from elsewhere, but you've got to find your own way to do it, or you've got to find some niche that you can do in some sense. Opportunities will come if you do all these things, but they won't just come like one opportunity and then you're going to make it or break it. There will be many opportunities, and some of them you won't be able to take, some of them you'll try to, and it won't work out for you. But the idea is, the guy who doesn't quit and who does all these things, inevitably, no matter what path it might be, it goes up, goes down a little bit, goes sideways, eventually he makes his way to the top. And there's not enough people do it, and we need more people. There's still really big holes for great types of content that we don't necessarily have in esports right now.